This VA story has me frustrated on a number of levels. I don't know if it's because the problem has been festering like a rotting carbuncle for over 6 years, or that veterans who made it back safely from battle are left to die in a crappy healthcare system, or the president says he just learned about it on the news. Is that true? What are his advisors and cabinet secretaries for? I know the guy spends a lot of time golfing. When he's waiting for his D.C. pals to tee off, can't he just read a white paper or something? You can get a grasp on current events? The president's press conference was wildly underwhelming, and even long-term allies like Tammy Duckworth, an Iraq vet, a double amputee, and an Illinois congresswoman, she can't mask her contempt. So why are Jill Biden and Michelle Obama the only ones worried about wounded vets? These are men and women in uniform, not fat children. Let's get our priorities straight. This is The Independent. Hi there and hello. I'm Kennedy, and welcome to the humpiest day of the week. I'm joined by Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch, that's him, and Camille Foster from Freethink Media. Together we hold hands, we sing songs, and we are The Independents. Yes, the president finally emerged from the sand to address the growing VA scandal. This is one you can't blame on racism or inequality. You won't be able to change the subject so easily as you have in the past. So why is he acting so surprised? Here's some highlights from the presser.
So when I hear allegations of misconduct, any misconduct, whether it's allegations of VA staff covering up long wait times or cooking the books, I will not stand for it. Not as commander-in-chief, but also not as an American.
Really? Now just not standing for it? Well, there are so many problems here. We must address them with our enviable party panel. We've got Catherine Mangu-Ward, the managing editor for a wonderful publication called Reason Magazine, and Andy Levy, the co-host of Red Eye and a nationally ranked noodler. All right, so let's say the VA is corrupt and inefficient, and basically every facility is worse than Walter Reed. So should we force vets into exchanges? Which brand of healthcare is worse? And if you keep it, how do you fix it? I want to ask you, Andy Levy, since you actually have some experience with the VA.
Yeah, I do. I think the first thing, look, having had to deal with the VA, I can tell you that in my experience, it was absolutely awful, and nothing horrible I hear about it ever surprises me. Wow. Look, I think, first of all, we need a hashtag. Because nothing is going to get solved if we don't have a hashtag.
Just hold up the paper right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really sad face.
No, absolutely. And we need to find out what the Kochs did to make this happen. So once we get those two balls rolling, I think everything will be all right. But look, as you pointed out, the administration knew there were problems with this when they came into office. They were specifically told that the wait times that were being reported were inaccurate and in some cases were fabricated. And now they're acting as if they just discovered this, which is absurd. I believe that Secretary Shinseki, I believe he cares. He's a disabled veteran himself. In addition to serving on the battlefield, he heroically stood up to Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz when it came to, saying we needed more troops in Iraq. I think he should be commended for that. But being mad as hell about something that's been going on the entire time you were in charge doesn't cut it.
There's this whole weird emoting. It's like managerial theater. And Obama did it today, saying, I will not stand for this. I will not tolerate it. Period. We literally had a couple of days.
How could he not have known?
Yeah,
I mean,
they're just words.
His tolerance seems to wax and wane.
Jay Carney spent several days this week and last week talking about whether the president was mad as hell or was he madder than hell. These are actually just hashtag slogans. This means nothing. I think the key that to me in all this with Shinseki and other people is when the American Legion went to Shinseki and said, is there anyone who should get fired over this stuff? He said, what are you talking about? The thought had not occurred to him. If you are saying that as a manager, that a system that is failing doesn't have anybody who is culpable for that, then you probably should just be fired as a starting point, I think.
But he's been feeling a lot of feelings about this issue, so I don't know why you want him to make managerial decisions. I mean, that's kind of the attitude, right? It's like, oh, well, it's really boring to talk about a policy. We're like, well, what are the incentives here? And the fact that, the people who are paying the bills are nowhere near the people who are getting the care is like a very fundamental principle we could be talking about.
I mean, what is the problem? Is it that there are layers of bureaucratic disconnect? Is it the system is so screwed and mired that they were just hoping it wouldn't see the light of day?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, and yes. But also, I mean, it's the same problem that we see in the public schools, right? It's a very, very personalized, very important service that you need intimate knowledge of the person you're providing that service to, being provided by a huge, monolithic, faceless entity far from the client, and most importantly, the bills are being paid far from the client. It's always going to suck.
Yeah, there's at least one other person who has yet to weigh in on this, so far as I know, and it's Paul Krugman, who wrote this article in the pages of the New York Times, and he talked about the fact that the VA was an organization that did disregard prices and could deliver services, and that would free it up from all of the horrible incentives that plague the private sector. I'm not quite sure that's the case, but he's obviously ignoring all of the horrible incentives that plague the public sector, and we see the stat.
Yeah, like a soldier who goes to the emergency room with urine in his blood, who's been diagnosed with late-stage bladder cancer and is told to come back 1 week later and dies.
Well,
not cool.
And then you have, like, Secretary Shinseki last week told Congress, well, most veterans are satisfied with their care. This isn't, you can't, that doesn't matter.
Have you talked to veterans who are satisfied? I mean, the veterans that I've spoken to.
I have yet to meet a veteran who is satisfied with their VA care, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
Somebody
they
must
might.
have said they are, though, because remember, early in the whole Obamacare, the selling of Obamacare, one of the things that was said over and over was, well, listen, you know, the federal government already manages the health care of, you know, gajillions of people. Look how well we're doing with our veterans.
But every veteran I know who had to deal with the VA shook their head. Could not believe they said that.
But somebody thought that was a good line.
Right. But the thing is, even to say,
I guess they didn't know.
Most veterans.
Until they found out today.
Well, no, I mean, maybe they were reading Paul
the
Krugman, who
DMV
said the VA is a success.
This isn't the DMV where a wait time or, you know, bad service is an inconvenience. This is life or death. You can't get away with saying, well, most of the time it works. That doesn't cut it. Not with this.
All right. Well, nearly 11 million Americans are on federal disability, and this is also an interesting and important story. Almost 2 million of them are children of disabled workers. Disability eats up more of the budget than welfare and food stamps. So why do you hear so little about it? How is it different than welfare? Is it indefinite? And are states somehow encouraged to put people on federal disability?
The thing about disability fund, which is crazy right now, it's 11 million people. The disability,
and growing.
The disability and growing with a bullet. The trust fund is scheduled to run out. The Social Security Disability Trust Fund is scheduled to run out in 2016. We've got 2 years left. After that moment, then people are going to get 80% of what they were promised to be paid out unless we do something in the meantime. If we talk about long-term entitlements, it's going to be a problem in 2033, 2035. No, disability is going to run out 2 years from now, probably quicker, because people are being incentivized to go into this.
And how long-term is disability? I'm curious, how does the system work?
Well, it depends. I mean, but the key issue, I think...
It depends?
Well, it depends, and it's interesting because one of the issues, one of the things that these folks have been called out for is the fact that there's a tremendous amount of bureaucratic ineptitude. Like, they are not doing the one thing that they ought to be doing aside from writing checks, and that's checking to see if people are still qualified for their benefits.
Yeah.
They're not doing it, and that's why the program is completely broken. Well, one of the many reasons.
Camila's completely right. Obviously, it's this notion that, like, oh, well, we'll just use these really good auditing techniques that the federal government is famous for to be sure that, you know, nobody gets payments when they shouldn't, or that, you know, improper payments aren't being made on a mass scale. Of course, it happens all the time. And, you know, I think this is, when we talk about unemployment statistics, these numbers often don't get mentioned or aren't kind of properly contextualized.
And are people, by the states, sort of shuttled into federal disability to improve states' employment outlook?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and also to save the state's money.
Yes.
Because the Social Security Administration pays out the checks.
Yeah.
In the private investigative world, one of the biggest areas for research is all on disability charges, state, local workman's comp, all this kind of stuff. People are going into there because you can get sweetheart pensions, and then you go out and you join the gymnastics team or something afterwards. It's a very fruitful.
How long does disability last? I mean,
you last your lifetime, as far as I know, it lasts your lifetime. Why wouldn't it? You're disabled.
Because it's expensive. Well, but what is, I guess we have to ask ourselves without being cruel, callous libertarians, damn you!
Too late.
What is...
But that's absolutely right, because that's the thing, because if you bring something like this up and point out all the fraud and all the waste, suddenly you don't care about people.
Yeah.
And that's why...
And we're back to our feelings, which is where all politics should reside.
That's why these systems never go away because nobody wants to be accused of not caring about people.
Well, I think that you've never minded that accusation.
Hashtag
I'm one of the few.
Hashtag.
Hashtag.
Cold and callous Andy Levy. All right, would you name your child after hipster lettuce? And who gets credit for Mitch McConnell's primary win? We will hash out yesterday's primary results and try to make sense of political chaos, which I think is beautiful. And then Bernie Mac Smith is here. It's almost time for your hate mail. Oh, he's making his way down the hall. He's so pissed. Stay with us. Bernie. Hi there. Well, no one really knows how to frame Tea Party wins and losses, which doesn't mean the end of one movement or the beginning of another. Maybe it means the terms Tea Party and establishment are starting to lose their meaning with independent voters who are looking at issues and candidates with growing sophistication. Or maybe everyone is confused and we're all going to hell on a handcart. Chris Moody is here. He's a political reporter for Yahoo News. So, Chris, tell us what was so super about Super Tuesday.
Well, you're exactly right about the political labels losing their meaning right now. There's a media narrative right now that it's establishment versus Tea Party, and it's not nearly that simple. And I think that is becoming much more obvious. If you look at the message of the candidates last night that won, they were not anti-Tea Party at all. They espoused the values on economic policy that anyone at a Tea Party rally probably would. But what the difference is it's a matter of winnability versus people who probably are unable to win. It's in plainer words, it's sometimes the crazies versus the people that have a chance.
Yeah.
And it's also a matter of tactics. It's people that will go to Washington and maybe get something done that people are looking at, as opposed to going there and saying, I'm not doing anything unless everything I want is on the table and is passed. I'm shutting down the government. I'm not passing a debt ceiling increase. I'm just putting my foot down.
So
and that's the real debate here.
And did everyone run against Obamacare? Or are they just waiting for the fall to do that?
Well, they will be running against whatever message works the best. And they're doing, I'm sure the Republicans are doing a lot of poll testing and focus grouping.
VA, IRS, Benghazi.
Right. Right now, Republicans aren't really sure what's going to work best, and they're throwing a lot of spaghetti on the wall. And it might be the Obamacare noodle. It might be the Benghazi noodle. They're still working on that right now. And I think that's clear because they do not have a message that's singular. But with the Super Tuesday over here for the primaries, I think you're going to see a lot more lockstep among the Republicans now that they know who their candidates are.
Talk a bit about Mitch McConnell, because 6-8 months ago, that was the race, that the Tea Party, that the insurgents, Freedom Works, they were going all in on opposing Mitch McConnell, because screw that guy, he sold us out so many times. Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell have forged this very interesting alliance that maybe you could tease out a little bit. So that sort of diluted that. What happened to that race? Because it wasn't anywhere close, and it all kind of dissipated.
Yeah, Matt Bevin's candidacy really did dissipate. I think that's an accurate way to put it.
Did he fumble, or did he just lose steam, or did McConnell get the message right? What happened?
Mitch McConnell was elected before I was born in Kentucky. He is a tough politician. He knows how to play the game. Matt Bevin, it's hard to take down a candidate like him. He's the most powerful Republican in the Senate, right? And in a primary, that's very difficult. He just didn't have what it takes to take him down.
Yeah.
And that's not surprising. Now, what I thought last night was so fascinating when the blogger Eric Erickson at Red State came out and said, and let's just put some context here, Eric Erickson loathes Mitch McConnell. I have not seen anyone on the internet who said worse things about McConnell. He posted a screenshot of his donation to McConnell's campaign, and then he tweeted it and said #majority. I thought that was a really big moment.
So what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean for the soul of the party? Have people given up on this idea of limited government within the Republican Party, and they're so desperate for a win in the Senate that they'll do anything, they'll back anyone just to get the numbers?
They are desperate for a win in the Senate. The word of this year for Republicans is win at any cost, because the alternative is probably is a Democrat that is far more liberal, of course, than any Republican, even if it's a Republican in Oregon that supports abortion rights, or a gay Republican in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, right? But again, look at the message. There's not much difference necessarily between Mitch McConnell's message and a lot of Tea Party Republicans. It's about the tactics. It's about being willing to negotiate. And that's still where the debate is right now in the party.
So it sounds like there's still a lot of soul searching going on in terms of finding that message for the end of the year, when these actual elections are going to be decided finally. Do you have any inclination as to where things are going to go? It sounded like healthcare was going to be the thing that has petered out. I don't know that Benghazi is going to work particularly well for them nationally when it comes to conservatives. And that seems to be where the action is. It's a question of whether or not conservatives are going to take the House. So what's the message?
You know what they could be doing is just not wanting to put all their eggs in the Obamacare basket. That could be another thing. I think Obamacare is still going to be a big issue. You're still going to have people having trouble getting insurance. But one of the most underreported things, parts about this GOP civil war, are issues like foreign policy, are issues like drug policy and gay marriage. A lot of these issues are things that there are some real growing divides within the Republican Party, and they're not necessarily Tea Party issues. And those, I think, are something we should be looking at as the future of this civil war, not necessarily over whether we should raise the debt ceiling. I think those are side issues to these, I would argue, far more important, bigger issues and divides.
Well, social conservatives are losing on those issues. They're getting desperate, and they're doing things like rallying money and troops to win races like Mitch McConnell's, which makes the whole thing even stranger.
Well, I think social conservatives are losing on gay marriage. I think that horse is out of the barn. On abortion, I think you see a lot of debate within the party, which I think is good and robust. You saw the National Republican Committee go to the Right to Life rally earlier this year and stand in the front row and really put their foot down on abortion. So yeah, on some issues they're absolutely, it's over gay marriage. But on other ones, that's still a debate. But I think with drugs and gay marriage and foreign policy, those are the real divides in this.
And immigration.
And immigration, absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, Chris Moody, thank you very much. Come back and see us.
Thank you for having me.
For certain. All right. Who's dumber? Someone who advocates for communism in America, or someone who bastardizes John Lennon's lyrics to destroy their own point? We'll read them. You can decide who's the bigger dum-dum. Next. We got a request for more air drums. I like your style. Wouldn't it be swell if elected officials were bright and intuitive? If they were, they'd be making millions in the private sector. Joe Garcia took time out of his busy earwax eating schedule to drop this nugget of wisdom about communism. See if you can understand what he's talking about. He may still have wax in his teeth. Hashtag hangnail.
Two of the safest cities in America, two of them are on the border with Mexico, and of course, the reason it is, we've proved that communism works. If you give everybody a good government job, there's no crime.
There's no crime. Communism is awesome. Isn't it great? I love it. It's so fantastic. Okay, we're just stay with me here because we're deciding who's the bigger dum-dum. Not to be outdone, Democratic Committee Vice Chairwoman Donna Brazile was trying to be poetic and profound when she tweeted this about minimum wage. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. Imagine all the people sharing the world. John Lennon. Hashtag raise the wage. Wasn't long before others chimed in, spotting the faulty logic. One person responded, quote, so it would be ideal for the already poor people if they gave up what few possessions they have? Why would they need more money? Another tweeted, if everyone is sharing, then no one needs a raise in wage. You can start. Please share some of your money with me now. Oh, I love that so much. Imagine just getting rid of your possessions, and then your bills are lower and not so much clutter, and then you don't need like $15 an hour, right?
Totally happy. Joe Garcia is dumber.
He's the bigger dum-dum?
He's the bigger dum-dum because, A, he's Cuban. Don't compare stuff to communism if you're Cuban, unless you're comparing like the DMV to communism or something, usually over the top. But also, if you read his longer quote, it just does not make sense. I mean, what he was trying to talk about there was that we shouldn't be building a bigger border wall.
Huh?
That doesn't really make sense in all of that. And El Paso, it is a safe, large city. It's been judged on a few years in a row. The safest city of above 500,000 in America, whether you believe that or not is another question. But it's not disproportionately, as far as I know, a huge government contracting area. If you want government jobs, go around, Washington, D.C., the periphery of Virginia, or go to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Yeah. Those are heavy government jobs. They aren't necessarily the most safe places in America. So I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. And unlike Donna Brazile, he's in power still.
Yeah, no, that's true. He is an elected official. neutral, and I think he's gone crazy from the concentration of wax in his stomach.
I think I have to agree with Matt on this one. And the reasoning here is much the same. But also, look, it's Twitter. Plenty of people say really stupid stuff on Twitter.
Yeah.
Let's just presume that the reason why Donna Brazil's thing sounds so ridiculous and outlandish is because she only had 100 odd characters
140,
to say it in.
yeah, that's
so
it.
That's what
Limited.
it comes down
That's
to.
about a
Maybe that's the
Twitter-length
issue.
song,
But the
fairness.
sentiment is broadly shared by a number of people. These are like juvenile 8-year-old sentiments about getting rid of money and making the world a better place, because all we really need is compassion.
That's
and
it.
that will heal the sick.
If it would heal the sick, then we wouldn't need to raise the wage.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if it would do all those magical, wonderful things, which perhaps in a perfect world it would, but we are imperfect beings, Donna. Your tweet still doesn't make sense, dear.
There is no such thing as a Democratic convention without a bunch of crappy 1972 era John Lennon songs. He only went through that phase for about 18 months. Then the rest of the time he was a total jerk and yelling at everybody and kicking people in the head.
I'm breaking up
But
the
they'll
band
play
and I'm
good
counting
piece
my
of-
money, living on Central Park. Woohoo!
That's one of my favorite John Lennon
It's a
songs.
really good one.
I hear there's a great mouth trumpet part in that one.
Bernie is gonna.
Speaking of that sound, the worst thing you've ever heard in your life. And is the FBI really hiring people who actively smoke the ganj? Find out in the topical storm next. Let us exfoliate your boredom with some abrasive news. This is the topical storm. Topic number 1. What a convenient thing time is. It erases blaring truths in history. Just ask Mike Myers. The comic who plays Austin Powers recently told GQ he was proud of the moment he and Kanye shared when they were on the stage together at the big Hurricane Katrina benefit in 2005, when Yeezus released this little tirade against then-President George W. Bush.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
So much pride.
Mike Myers looked so proud, didn't he? No, he looked shocked and horrified. Though he claims he knew Kanye was going freestyle, Myers told GQ, quote, "For me, it isn't about the look of embarrassment on my face. It is truly about the injustice that was happening in New Orleans."
God.
Oh, malarkey, son. You were about to poop your pants. The only thing you were super proud of in that moment was your lack of incontinence. Super proud.
Have we heard from him culturally since that moment? I mean, that was kind of the last thing.
Wow.
Maybe that's what. Seriously,
Are you saying Kanye West ended Mike Myers' career?
a little bit. I mean, it was a.
Yeah, when did Goldmember come out? Because that was really the last funny movie he did.
Why would he be talking about it now in any context?
Wow,
Right?
trying to redeem himself. Kanye actually apologized for that whole thing.
He did.
So it's sort of weird that Mike Myers is proud of it.
He did on the Today Show. He told
his
Matt Lauer, it's like, you know, I probably should just sat the president down.
I think he also just like berated him for playing it back to him. Don't play that back to me. I know what I said. I'm not. But he didn't take off his shirt and storm out.
I love your Kanye impression.
So, yeah.
It's so accurate. Okay.
I'm pretty good at it.
That's true. Topic number 2. Do you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world? Guess what it is? It's not my mouth trumpet. No, it's 50 school kids riding a subway for 40 minutes, all playing recorders.
Oh, God.
At the same time. Have a listen. Oh, it's like the voices of angels. It's just beautiful. So let me ask you, Camille, would you still be a libertarian after 20 minutes of that subway ride, or would you have smothered several of the life out of those children?
Well, given that in a perfectly libertarian universe, the trains would be owned by a private company that could make a rule. No recorders on the subway. Did I say that? Whoops.
Okay, Gavin, he's up there.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. We'll bleep it out. We've got a really effective delay button. What would you do if you're stuck on that train?
Seriously, can we stop playing that despite
It's
here?
so bad.
I can't handle that frequency. It's
so bad.
That's worse than Ceausescu.
I too would join along. All right, well, topic number 3, Paris Gray is smarter than your average graduating high school senior. Teachers and administrators were confused by her yearbook post, which seemed to be a random collection of elements. Miss Gray put in the book, quote, "When the going gets tough, just remember to barium, carbon, potassium, thorium, astenine, arsenic, sulfur, uranium, phosphorus." Which seems pretty tame. Maybe the girl loves chemistry, but when you use the symbol for each element, the quote then reads, "When the going gets tough, just remember to back that up." That's so funny. Inspiring and true words. But Paris was told because of that she wouldn't be able to do the senior walk or give a commencement address. How awful. But the school had to back it up after receiving so much media attention for punishing her. She is now once again free to speak, and freedom is elemental.
I want to offer that girl an internship at your company, at my company, at this company. She's great.
She obviously appreciates the great American poet Juvenile, who I believe originated that phrase.
Yeah.
Underappreciated. Real problem with our public schools.
It really is. But Camille, thank you for shining some light and warmth on such an important subject. Back it up right here. All right, topic number 4. The FBI is getting a sweet cash infusion from Congress to hire some hackers, but they have a bit of a problem. There is a strict no marijuana policy, yet oddly, there's some hobby crossover among hackers who are often young men who like to spend hours on their devices, sometimes while smoking marijuana. Government agencies usually have a 3-year weed-free window. But with all these open jobs, the FBI might have to rethink the limiting factors in their hiring processes. When asked at a recent trade conference whether or not a man's friend should hold off on applying to the FBI, Director James Comey told the guy that his friend should go ahead and apply because in the FBI, you can apply if you're high. The director later qualified his comment saying, "That was a joke.
This is a problem all throughout governments at every state and local level. I used to go to a website called lapd.org where people who wanted to join the LAPD, recruits, were talking about what you needed to do. The single thing they talked about the most is how do you lie about taking the drug test? Because they'd all smoke weed, because anyone who wants to be a cop has smoked weed probably, at least in LA. It's a dumb thing, and we're hopefully going to get to a point where we realize that all these little bitty artifacts of the drug war are just dumb. It turns us all into liars, and you shouldn't have to lie to get a job with the government.
Yeah, and one of my friends who went to a recruiting office after high school, the recruiter asked him, "How many times have you smoked marijuana?" And he goes, and the recruiter held up his hands and went, "2 times." He said, "Okay, I'll write that down." Very good. And then he served honorably in the armed forces. Well done,
Good.
Scott.
With distinction.
All right, I didn't say his last name. Would never say Scott Jorgensen on TV. Coming up, we have another controversy for the NFL. This time, it's about pill popping. Plus, Rand Paul pulls a sequel to his drone filibuster. How'd that work out? We'll tell you. Andy Levy and Catherine Mangy-Ward are back next. Stay with us.
Yeah, you better be fair. The sucker over there, you try to keep it yesteryear, the good old days. Please come crawl out your window. I'll use your hands and legs. It won't ruin you.
Beautiful sight. How are you, sister, holding up that torch? Your lats must be exhausted. So if a bunch of NFL players are getting compensation for concussions, why shouldn't people see some scratch from the league for getting addicted to goofballs? 7 former NFL players are suing the league because they say they were given mountains of pills, steroids, or treatments that have rendered them sick and addicted. And with no NFL money coming in, they say their lives are ruined. Is the NFL on the hook, or is this a case of opportunistic pill poppers and their bad luck? Former NFL wide receiver J.D. Hill said this: "I was provided with uppers, downers, painkillers, you name it. Well, in the NFL, I became addicted and turned to the streets after my career and was homeless. Never took a drug in my life, and I became a junkie in the NFL." Oh, J.D., a sad tale. Our panel is back. It's Catherine and Andy. So let me ask you, should the NFL be handing out money for people who were given lots and lots of access to things like narcotics when they were players?
I think the question we need to talk about today is, should Reason Magazine be handing out uppers, downers, because that sounds
if only the editor-in-chief were here to answer that question.
My boss were at this table. No,
Delegate, Catherine.
This is, not to go full on libertarian cliche, but let's just do it.
Okay.
personal responsibility, right? I mean, it may be true that these were available. It may be true that this guy was encouraged to take them. But at some point, it's like, did they hold him down and pinch his nose and put it in a little piece of cheese like you do for a dog? I
think the article actually suggests that he was strapped to a gurney. He could not move. They forced him down his throat. That's not true. No,
I missed that part.
Oh, it was not? No, I thought they fed him like a duck.
I mean,
How they fatten their livers for foie gras.
This is, every office has coffee in it, and frankly, although Reason lacks a pill stash, we do have beer in the fridge sometimes, and I certainly would not consider suing my employer.
First of all, I talked to Matt, and when he discovered that they weren't handing out pills, he said he was mad as hell.
Was he mad as hell? Was he madder than hell?
I think he said mad.
Hashtag
Yeah. But, okay, I'm going to not go full-on libertarian on this. I have absolutely no doubt that the players in a lot of these cases were willing participants. They're competitors. They want to be on the field. If they say, you can take this pill and you can play, as opposed to having to sit out or possibly lose your job, yeah, I'm sure they took them. But the medical staff had to have information that the players didn't have. The medical staff had to know that there were long-term effects of giving Special K to human beings on a regular basis, or to pumping them full of Vicodin and Percocet and whatever it was. And it also wouldn't shock me, from what we know about all of this stuff, if the doctors didn't straight up lie to the players about it. If the players, I mean, yeah, personal responsibility, but if you're a 22-year-old playing football and an actual doctor says to you, I'm going to give you this shot, you're going to feel better, or here, take these pills, and gives you a prescription for pills, are you going to sit there and say, well, I don't know, what
Isn't that what happened in Varsity Blues?
40 years later? Yes.
This is also, I mean, this also lends, I think, this plays into the kind of addiction narrative, which is actually not that reflective of reality. I mean, this idea that, someone is given painkillers for a certain amount of time, and then they're sort of on this road directly
roller
to
coaster to
homelessness,
hell.
and that's everyone's story is actually a really harmful tale to tell. I mean, most people use drugs, all kinds of drugs, a little bit.
Although in the case of NFL players, it's really one of the only classes of human beings who probably, once they're retired, get addicted to painkillers more than anybody else, because they're 6'5", 300-pound monsters.
They've got big bodies. We're hitting very hard.
Hashtag monsters. No, and they do get addicted to this stuff. I think it is an information question. Did some people say, hey, I don't want heavy drugs, and were they giving them anyways? Probably. This has been well known for a while.
Or is it a case of, and I know that I'm only worth money when I'm on the field playing, so do whatever you can to patch me up and send me out there.
But I think
Put me in, coach.
This is also a lot like the concussion stuff, though, where, look, we know a lot more about concussions now than we did back then, but even so, there seems to be evidence that the league withheld information about concussions from the players.
We actually know more about drugs now, and we know that some drugs aren't as bad as we once thought.
Right, but look, I'm not talking about, oh, you hurt yourself, you take some Vicodin for a couple of months and whatever. These guys were playing for 5-10 years where they probably were being given these pills every damn day and weren't just taking one every couple days because they felt sore.
All right, well, on a different note, why do some people name their kids after food? Kale. Yes, kale. It was a popular name last year, but the rugged lettuce wasn't alone on the list of baby names. Food names, actually. Tamari, honey, rye, chai, maple, peaches, pepper, and ginger. Those are just some of the popular names from last year. Those people are naming their sweet little babies after food. So, Catherine, why didn't you name your son Coco?
I can't even. No, I mean, my feeling about this whole thing is like, God bless America, where we can name our children just completely insane things, and the federal government is like, high five, kale, let's do it. I mean, and it sounds like
you can't do that in France.
You can't do it in France. You can't do it in Sweden. There are places where there's a list of approved names, and thank you very much. You should choose one off that list, and that's not how we roll.
No, there have been occasions where the government has stepped in and said, nah, you can't name your
There was that Hitler kid.
Shathid.
Right?
Yeah, someone allegedly named their child Shathid, and then when the Social Security nurse went to type it out, I was like, S-H-I, Toey. I don't think we can do that.
True story, my mom worked OBGYN at the same hospital where the Octomom had all of her brood, and so she had a lot of baby naming stories, and the best food baby naming story was Velveeta. Back in the 70s.
Velveeta is delicious.
I'm an expert on this because I have an oddly spelled, frequently mispronounced name, and I'm waiting for it to catch on. other people to name their children.
I think the fact that
is your name a food group?
No, but
my name is almost a food mango.
That's very in Romania. That actually means gypsy peasant.
But
actually, it means a small fat pig.
Better.
That's totally true.
But at least Kale is an actual name that we usually spell with a C, as any NASCAR fan knows.
Kale is a name.
But
it is?
Kale Yarborough.
Kale Yarborough coming down the stretch. He's going to get the checkered flag here at Daytona. It's a big day.
But Kennedy, is this any weirder than having a last name as a first name?
Yeah, it's different.
All right.
And I'll tell you why.
If you say so.
Because kids who are named after food, according to my friend, and this is not a statistic, are more likely to be sexually abused.
Oh,
because I wanted to name my daughter Strawberry Sugar, and she said, "Don't do it."
Well, that
here's
is a
why.
stripper name, so that would be a problem. I'm glad that you didn't do.
Well, I'm glad I didn't too. Thank you very much, and thank you, Catherine and Andy. This was a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
And thank little Coco for me when you see him. All right, coming up, Rand Paul hit the Senate floor again today, passionately talking about drone strikes against Americans. But how many people decided to stand with Rand? We'll break down the numbers, plus your hate mail is not too far away. Stay with us. Brought his Stand with Rand show back to the Senate floor this morning as he railed against the nomination of David Barron to the U.S. First Circuit Court of Appeals. He was, while working for the Obama Justice Department, Barron wrote the memo used to justify killing Americans abroad without due process. The self-proclaimed, quote, most transparent administration ever has still not released the memo to the public, but Senator Paul made it clear that the memo is not his primary issue with Barron's nomination.
I have supported many of the president's nominees. The debate is not about transparency. It is about the substance of the memos. I cannot and will not support a lifetime appointment of someone who believes it is okay to kill an American citizen not involved in combat without a trial.
All right, so this was clearly a different filibuster for Rand Paul. It only lasted about 31 minutes. And because Harry Reid invoked the nuclear option and changed the rules on the Senate floor for presidential nominations, now the filibuster doesn't quite have the same effect that it would have in the past. If there had been the former procedural process in place, would a filibuster have blocked this nomination?
I don't think it would have blocked. It would have been the same thing that happened when the first Stand with Rand happened a year ago with the block CIA Director John Brennan, was that he would have talked for 17 hours or a much longer time, and then he would have lost eventually, like he lost in this case. And it was a similar kind of loss in one sense that in both cases, he coughed up rationales from the administration to explain why it engages in using executive power, lethal power against people. And so President Obama has said he will release this memo after they redacted a whole bunch sometime in the future. And that was enough to buy off Democratic support. They voted to close this thing off 52-43. And it's interesting to see.
It was a close vote, though.
It was a pretty close vote. But a lot of civil libertarians on the left who have been standing with Rand on a lot of these transparency issues and the drone issues, people like Senator Ron Wyden from the great state of Oregon and Bernie Sanders, they voted for David Barron. Yeah. So he will be voted in later this week, as soon as tomorrow, and it's because Democrats defected.
And I suppose the filibuster would not have prevented this gentleman from being advanced and ultimately getting the position. But what the rule change does do is it diffuses this opportunity to have a conversation. Did Rand Paul lose the last time around? Sure. Was there an opportunity lost here? Absolutely. We ought to be talking about these memos. It's the hard cases that we should be taking a really close look at. That's what. What else is Congress for if not for these kinds of conversations and debate?
And unfortunately, with the two-party system, all anyone's ever doing is keeping score. So Republicans know in the Senate, in the future, when they have control, when they have the power, they're going to do whatever they can to shut down Democratic filibusters because they can.
Yeah, and we will continue not having meaningful conversations on the Senate floor.
And for that, the country will suffer, and that sucks. And you know what, David Barron? You're not that rad. All right, well, it is almost time for your nasty emails and tweets, read by Bernie Macsmith, our Human Resources Director. Your 2 minutes hate is next. All right, it's that time again. We do our best here every single night, just so you know. And we have nothing but love for you. But that's not always how you feel about us. All right, these are your nasty emails and tweets. This is 2 Minutes Hate. Fox Business HR Director Bernie Macsmith is back with us. It's been a few weeks, Bernie, and I see you shaved your beard.
You know what? It was a fun week. It was a good time in my life, but that's over now. It's time to move on.
All right, well, let's move on to those nasty little missives that you so love.
All right? I can't decide what's worse, keeping it Camille where it's Matt or AIDS.
It's very harsh.
That is a really mean thing to say.
I concur, but the next one's more creative and perhaps less harsh. This is actually a haiku that was sent to us.
Oh.
Kennedy yapping, much too hyper to see that no one is clapping.
Haiku are not supposed to rhyme. Genius.
I did not write it.
I'm not talking to you, Bernie. I'm talking to the person who wrote it.
Okay, that's fair.
Didn't mean to be disrespectful in my tone. Please proceed.
It's all right. We're good. The next one's from the recent message board, and it is, wow, halfway over already? All the substantive discussion made the time fly, which was sarcastic.
Oh, was it? Oh, because I was like, oh, great, the show is moving quickly for.
Are you sure? I'm sarcastic. Yeah,
I believe under the context, I believe it was, but I will go back.
You're not reading the handles of the people on the.
That was from the notorious GKC that read that one, and I'll provide them as
Sounds
best
like
I
a rap star.
I'm sure he's pleased with what we're doing.
Yeah.
The next email was all in caps, and it reads,
very important.
Idiot Snowden snowed you all. No whistleblower goes to communist country. Unnecessary '(S) for sanctuary. Extra period.
It's very good.
He's obviously right, because what he wrote is in all caps. I'm sorry, Bernie.
He felt loudly about it, I believe.
Yeah. Well, he snowed us all.
Yep.
Camille.
He's ended the debate.
Laurel writes, who is that woman with the big, ugly, gigantic glasses who cannot let someone finish a sentence? And who is that guy with the big, ugly glasses that cannot articulate proper English?
That's mean, but it's also the first time.
It's all right. It's all part of the job.
I mean, my English is not, seriously, my English is not that bad, right?
It's the first time I haven't felt insecure about not having glasses.
Of the comments which were made, I disagree with the articulate portion of that.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
You've just revealed yourself. Guess who's not getting a Memorial Day cookie?
The next one is from Sandy, and it says, you just lost our family's trust. We won't be back.
What did we do, Sandy? I'm sorry.
Seriously?
Did I bugger your dog? Jeez, woman.
The final one,
God.
I had to truncate this
It
through the
does.
screen, but it's a little bit longer. I do have one request for Kennedy that might improve the show. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Not just a little, but a lot. I don't mean to belabor the point, but shutting up would be good. Again, much love, but chill the out. Even off the air, maybe, as practice for not talking a blue streak through every episode of the show. Outside of that, it's the best TV on TV. And that's from Colin, who said he's a big fan who really does like Kennedy, so that's constructive criticism.
Oh, thank you very much, Colin. Appreciate it. And thank you so much. Thanks, Bernie. Thanks for watching tonight. Make sure you watch this Friday. We have a